It seems the lawyers have taken over, right? It was really the Attorney General that kind of put this deal dead. What will it take for him to reverse his stance on it?
I mean, it's good news for lawyers because, you know, finally you recognise that the value of law. The problem was that what the UK had asked for was that we'd have a unilateral exit from the backstop. So the backstop, that's what regulates the relations between the north and the south of Ireland. And the trouble is, what the Brexiteers don't want is to be trapped into that backstop forever. But the trouble is, the EU says, well, it's like an insurance policy, and you don't want to have a hole in your insurance policy just when you need it most, when your house catches fire. And so the UK was trying to say we want an exit, and the EU says, no, you can't. And what came back was a real fudge. And it basically said we could sort of get a suspension in the event of bad faith by the EU. Really difficult to show that the EU is acting in bad faith.
I mean, this is the unreasonable part of it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
If you speak to people in the EU and lawyers there, they say that actually the goalposts that the UK have been wanting have changed. That before they were saying, well, what if the EU is unreasonable, then we want out, and now they want to unilaterally actually get out of the backstop. This is a completely different demand.
And the trouble is, that what was going on is that you don't see the language of reasonableness in the text. The lawyer, the Attorney General, a very good English lawyer, wanted to put this magic term reasonableness in there because reasonableness is very much an English law, a common law concept. And what he was trying to do was to say, well, if it's reasonableness, then it's a common law concept, therefore the Court of Justice should have no say. What they were trying to box and cox was to try and make sure that the Court of Justice in Luxembourg has no control over this at all, because the European Court of Justice is the real big beast that the Brexiteers don't like.
Right, but then who would be the arbiter?
That's the problem. So there is an arbitration mechanism in the text which was going to be relied on, an arbitration mechanism which has 10 arbitrators from the UK, 10 from the EU and 5 independent. But it's ultimately a matter of EU law on questions of customs union, and that's ultimately for the Court of Justice, and that question was ducked.
And of course, Tom, you know, the law in the UK is very different from laws outside the UK and other European countries. I don't know whether we've lost half of our international audience because this is so in the weeds, Professor, but it does seem crazy that actually we're discussing amendments on a legal term, how they would be interpreted, where this should be a political decision.
Well, this is the argument, and this is where the Attorney General role is interesting, because he acted as a lawyer yesterday, and he said, on the law, we haven't got what we wanted. But essentially, it's ultimately a political decision about whether he'd negotiated or enough had been negotiated to get the Brexiteers on side. And the politicians said, no, they didn't. And that's why it goes back to your original point about this is the time for the lawyers. In fact, this is where you've got a dovetailing of law and politics, and it's messy.